Cranky Mr. Carlson. Aiden, you're running late. Aiden grabbed the blueberry muffin from his mother's outstretched hand, kissed her quickly on the cheek, and sprinted out the door. He jogged down the sidewalk to school, but slowed as he rounded the corner. He crossed the street as usual to avoid the sidewalk in front of Cranky Mr. Carlson's house. Weeds and wild vines grew over Mr. Carlson's dilapidated fence and encroached on the sidewalk. Everyone knew Mr. Carlson was the meanest man on the block. Aiden stared at the window of the old house where he saw two beady eyes staring back at him from inside. He picked up his pace and sped by so he could cross the street back where his school was located. Spooky old man, Aiden thought to himself. That afternoon, when Aiden arrived home from school, his mother met him at the door. Aiden, would you please take this plate of cupcakes to Mr. Carlson? Oh, Mom, you know he's creepy. As Aiden's mom handed him the plate of cupcakes, she said, Aiden, you know that kindness is never wasted. Let me know how Mr. Carlson likes the cupcakes. With that, she walked away and left Aiden staring at the plate of goodies. Reluctantly, Aiden headed to Mr. Carlson's house. Instead of crossing the street, he slowly entered the gate through the leaning fence. This yard could stand to be mowed, thought Aiden. He climbed the creaky stairs and knocked on the door. Aiden saw the familiar beady eyes peeking through the window in the door. Who's there? A scratchy voice called. It's Aiden from down the street, Aiden answered. The door opened a crack, then wider. When it was fully open, Aiden extended the cupcakes inside the open doorway. Come in, young'un, said Mr. Charleston. Come in and sit a spell. These cupcakes look good enough to eat. Aiden hesitated, but something told him he would be safe. Once inside, he noticed the house wasn't as creepy as he thought it would be. There was an old couch with washcloths placed neatly on the arms. Aiden thought that probably covered the holes or worn spots. There was a worn leather chase lounge chair pulled up close to an old-style boxy TV. An ancient rocking chair with pads tied to the seat and back was nearby. The pads were on an old flowered print and had ruffles around the edges. Aiden wondered if he used to be Mrs. Carlson's chair when she was alive. Have a seat and stay a while, invited Mr. Carlson in his raspy voice. I've turned on the light, but the bulb burned out, and I can't climb a step stool anymore to change it. Aiden brightened up. I can do it for you. He pulled the step stool under the light fixture and installed the bulb Mr. Carlson handed him. Mr. Carlson and Aiden sat at the table, enjoying the cupcakes and the warm light shining from the new bulb. Mr. Carlson told Aiden about his grown son and his grandchildren who lived in another state. Aiden told Mr. Carlson about his school, his friends, and trying out for the football team. They blew the dust off a checkerboard that sat in the corner of the dining room table and played a game. Aiden won the game, but he wondered if Mr. Carlson let him win. Soon it was time to go. As Aiden headed out the door, he called over his shoulder, I'll be back this weekend to mow your front yard. Mr. Carlson waved goodbye on the porch until Aiden was out of sight.